starting a new unit. We finished Congress, which took us several weeks because Congress is a pretty big unit. When you guys did the Constitution, you know that that was the biggest one. This one's still pretty important for obvious reasons. The presidency wasn't as a big deal until like the 1940s when FDR really expanded the power. But we're going to talk about that a little bit today. I do have to change a few policies. Hopefully you guys are listening. I understand that you're home and I can't force you to do anything, pay attention, do any homework, but for those reasons, I have to change my policy. My philosophy of education is that it's all about the learning. Your grade should be a reflection of do you know the content. But these circumstances are pretty extreme, and we tried this before last year, and it was a disaster, and no one did anything. So I'm changing my philosophy in that I'm not allowing everything to be turned in at the day of the test anymore. When I give you guys an assignment, I'm giving you a due date, which is probably going to be the next day. And if you don't get it done in time, it's going to be half credit. Okay? I gave you guys a lot of responsibility with the other one, but I just don't think a lot of people are going to be able to handle that with these circumstances. So make sure you're doing stuff. Make sure you're doing stuff on time. Don't give me that BS that you didn't have time, because this is the time set aside for school. This is the time set aside for this class. You got 45 minutes every day. I am never going to hold you online for 45 minutes over these next 3 weeks. Okay, we're going to take the notes today. They're going to be about 10 minutes, and then I'm going to give you a small assignment. You'll have 20 minutes to do that assignment, or 25 to 30 minutes. Okay, so get your stuff done. Do it on time. Okay. So today we are talking about the presidency. Article 1 established Congress, and that was the big section. Article 2 establishes the presidency. It's called the executive branch because the whole idea is the president executes the law. That is his job. Okay? So the executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States, and then that whole Article 2 gives all the different details about what he can or cannot do. And if you go back to why we made a president, you have to remember the Articles of Confederation were super weak. You know, like we didn't have a government that worked, because they didn't have any power, they couldn't have an army, they couldn't tax, and so they established a strong central government. They said, yeah, we kind of need someone to be in charge of this. And another reason they put somebody in charge of it is kind of a continuing theme, is that they thought the people were too dumb. Because remember, Congress is the people, and our government early on didn't really trust the people to make good decisions. So they said, well, Congress is the people, so we need to have another person who can kind of, override the people if we need to. And so they created the presidency, which, again, is not chosen by the people. It's chosen by electors. So that was kind of their check on dumb people, essentially. If you look at the job, we look at the president today and we'd say, yeah, he's the most important part of the government, probably, for sure. But if you look at the constitutional duties of the president, like what the Constitution gives him or her power to do, it's really not that much. It's important stuff, but it's not like, Congress had those 18 to 20 specific powers and all those inherent powers and all the, what's the word I'm looking for? Implied powers. The president doesn't really have a lot of listed powers. The commander-in-chief, he's in charge of the armed forces, the military, the Navy, the Marines, the Coast Guard, Army, all those different things. That's a pretty big one. He can use them to execute the laws and defend the country. He can also choose the leaders of executive departments. You guys have probably heard the term the cabinet before, the president's cabinet. These are his advisors, the people he puts in charge of these different departments. So you probably heard, like, let's just say the Department of Defense. You've probably heard that before. The Department of Education, the Department of Homeland Security. He picks somebody. Donald Trump has chosen people to be in charge of those departments and make decisions for those things. So Betsy DeVos, kind of a controversial pick, is the Secretary of Education. If you are in charge of a department, then you are a secretary. And this is what Biden's doing right now. If you follow the news, he's trying to choose people to be in his cabinet. And his big thing is he wants his cabinet to reflect America and be as diverse as the United States. So he's trying to include a lot of minorities in there and women, which is great. We need diversity in places where decisions are made. So he also gets to make treaties. The Senate has to approve, of course. So if Georgia goes Republican and these Senate races, then Donald or Joe Biden's going to have a hard time making treaties. But Donald Trump has famously pulled out of a lot of treaties. He pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal. He pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement. He pulled out of a Russian missile treaty. Obama treaties that he didn't like. Um, and he also grants reprieves and pardons. This one's pretty interesting. He can basically take people in prison and say, I pardon you, meaning your crimes have all been absolved and you are no longer in prison and no longer have crimes against you. He does this sometimes ceremonially, like there was a boxer who was put in prison for racial reasons, racist reasons, and he passed away in prison, so Trump, like, posthumously, which means after he died, pardoned him with a big ceremony with his family there. Reprieve is just where you like delay the sentence. Pardons where you get rid of the sentence. There was always like a famous movie scene where like the guy would be getting strapped to the electric chair and there'd be a phone in the room and he's hoping for a pardon from the governor. That's the idea. Trump has also pardoned some other people which were a little more controversial. There was a sheriff in Arizona called Joe Arpaio who was profiling Latinos, which just means he was pulling people over for what my Spanish teacher in high school called driving while Mexican. Just that he saw these Latino-looking people and pulled them over and said, show me your identification. Prove to me that you're here legally, which is illegal. You can't just pull somebody over because they look a certain way or just because you want to. The courts told him he had to stop doing it. He said, no, I'm not going to stop doing it. And he didn't. And he was arrested and put in prison. And Donald Trump has a hardline stance on illegal immigration. So he pardoned Joe Arpaio, which was kind of controversial. And Joe Arpaio ended up running for Congress, but he lost. Those are like the constitutional duties. There's a few others that basically there's a few famous times where presidents have done things that they didn't technically have power to do, but they did it anyway. A few famous examples of that. Thomas Jefferson was the president, the third president of the U.S., and he bought a patch of land from France. There's nothing in the Constitution that says the president can buy land and add it to the country. In fact, Congress specifically has that power to add land to the country. But Thomas Jefferson's like, hey, I can get a deal. I'm going to buy this land. He bought it from France. And, of course, it was the Louisiana Purchase. I can't remember. Does anybody know the number? Like, how much was an acre? The number we got, like the price we got, was outrageous how cheap the land was. Does anybody know that number? It's kind of a famous stat. I don't know if you guys have come across it before. Anyway, this guy, Teddy Roosevelt, another famous president, a really hardcore president, a lot of cool stories about him, tough guy. He had a quote in which he said, the president should be able to do anything that the needs of the nation demanded. So basically he's saying that not only should the president not be limited by these powers, he should be able to do anything he wants to as long as the Constitution specifically doesn't forbid it. Okay? My speaker's clicked. Did somebody say something?
Yeah, I just said 4 cents an acre.
4 cents an acre. How much does an acre cost right now? I mean, of course, the price is going to be more because it's older, but it shouldn't be that much. Well, right now, an acre is like 10 grand or something like that. So, and we got it for 4 cents an acre. Holy cow. Thanks for looking that up, Marcus. Roosevelt used his inherent powers, or the powers that he didn't technically have, to break up trusts, which were like monopolies. Truman, really interesting president, just the circumstances of his presidency. I used to make students do reports about presidents, but I'm not going to make you guys do that. I say he's one of my favorites just because he's interesting. He took over at the end of World War II. He decided to drop the bomb. He was the president during the Korean War. Just a lot of stuff happened during his presidency. And during the Korean War, the steel industry went on strike, which is not a good time to have a strike. He said basically, no, you can't go on strike, is what he said. He ordered them back to work, which, again, the Constitution does not give him power to do that, but he did it anyway. And other presidents have done this too. Bill Clinton ordered, I think, airline workers back to work. But Congress told him he couldn't do it. They actually said, no, you can't do that, Harry. So that's an example where the Congress stepped in and said no. Last thing for today, where does the president get his power? Basically he gets it from the people because we pick him and we also pick Congress. So when we pick the president, we're sending the message that these are the things we want to happen because we elected him or her president. And Congress, you need to make those things happen. And when they had that whole controversy with the Supreme Court Justice, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, dying, and everyone said, Trump, you need to wait to pick the next justice. And the Republicans, Trump basically said, no, we won the election. The people wanted us to make these decisions. That's why we won the election. And we won the Senate. So people wanted us to make these decisions. They trusted us. That's why we won the Senate. And so they said, we have this mandate, this authority from the people to make these decisions. And that's the argument they used when they chose Amy Coney Barrett. And not only that, the people also have pretty important sway over the government in that they control public opinion. Because if the president is very unpopular, take George W. Bush, for example. At the end of his presidency, he was crazy unpopular. People hated George W. Bush. And even Republicans basically tried to get away from him because they knew if they supported his policies and supported his ideas, they wouldn't win re-election. So public opinion polls are pretty important. Like right now, Donald Trump's popularity is in the 40s, I think. So you see some Republicans trying to get away from him. And I know him refusing to concede the election is really unpopular amongst most of the American people. And you can see a lot of Republicans. I think Chris Christie came out today, who's a famous Republican, and he said it's an embarrassment. So you see a lot of these Republicans trying to get away from Trump so they'll win their reelection. So basically the president has no power if he's not popular. If he's unpopular, the Congress isn't going to do what he says. So public opinion is pretty important. Which leads us to today's assignment. I want you to just kind of look at President Trump's opinion polls, like throughout his presidency. You see a lot of trends amongst presidents. A lot of times there's the honeymoon period where it starts high, and then as they get to the end of their period, people are just sick of them, regardless of which party they're on. They go lower. So I have on the website a link to a 538 website, that same one we looked at when we did our presidential election prediction. It's got Trump's approval rating, and again, it just takes all the approval ratings that it can find and averages them, and it gives some power, more power to others, more prestigious ones than others. But I want you to look at Trump's opinion polls throughout his presidency. I want you to compare it to other presidents' opinion polls. There is a Google Forms that I want you to open up and answer those questions using that website. Now, here's the thing that is really it's one of my biggest pet peeves that students do, and you guys almost all did it on that review sheet. I want you to use the information that I am giving you to answer these questions. Don't just Google stuff and then copy down the first thing you get. Here's what happened on your review sheet. I was grading your review sheets, and I'm grading them for accuracy, and I'm grading who is the president of the Senate. And I keep getting the same answer. Somebody said Daryl something. Daryl Bradley. It's like, who's Daryl Bradley? Whatever. I went to the next person's paper. Daryl Bradley. Next person's Daryl Bradley. Next person's Daryl Bradley. I joke you not. Probably 95% of the class chose Daryl Bradley as the president of the Senate. And I thought, well, how are we getting Daryl Bradley? Who the heck is this guy? And so I Google him, and he is a senator from Belize, a Central American country. Like, why are they picking Daryl Bradley? Maybe it's a different one. And then I thought, oh, I know what they're doing. And I Googled, who is the president of the Senate? And guess what comes up very first from Wikipedia? The current president is Daryl Bradley. No one actually checked that. You literally just Googled it, took the first thing you saw and put it down. It is wrong, okay? Don't just Google answers, okay? Use these sources that I'm giving you. Use me whenever we're doing stuff in class. Don't just Google answers. It drives me nuts. It's just so ignorant to do that, okay? It requires no thought whatsoever, all right? So don't Google the answers to these Google Forms because you'll find different answers because 538's answers are going to be different than other ones, and I'm using 538's answers as my answer key, okay? So you guys have the remainder of class today. You got half an hour. It should not take you that long. Go to the website. It's linked in Google Classroom, and answer the questions on the Google Forms. Okay, and that's what you guys have to do today. There is no Ed Puzzle. The classroom says Ed Puzzle. There is none for you guys. I'm going to make this one into an Ed Puzzle for my other class, so you guys lucked out. You don't have to do one, but go answer those questions on the Google Forms about the approval ratings. And again, it's due today. Okay, by tonight. You have time to do it. Don't tell me you're too busy. Okay, get it done. If you don't get it done today, it is half credit, and some of you guys can't afford half credit stuff. So you guys have the remainder of time to get to work. Does anybody have any questions? Alrighty. Okay, go pull up that website, pull up the Google Forms, and answer those questions. And I will see you guys tomorrow. You can go ahead and log off and work independently for today.
Hey, Mr. Thomas, I have a question about the election and